This week we heard evidence from 7 witnesses. We heard from Marsha Rousseau, the De Zalze Estate security manager, Kuchlenberg, the first paramedic on the scene, Andre van Breda, Henry's uncle, Bianca van der Westerhuizen, Henry's alleged girlfriend, Precious Myongane, the domestic worker, James John, Marilee's boyfriend at the time, investigating officer Stain. Precious, the domestic worker, and James John, the ex-boyfriend of Marilee, identified in court an emergency contact list which was placed on the fridge in the Van Breda family home. They also told the court that they had received instructions from the family that in the event of an emergency they should use those contact numbers. Now, this is peculiar because Henry has said in his plea explanation that he had to Google an emergency number and could not find one immediately, and that is the reason why he couldn't get through to emergency services at 4:24 a.m. around the time when he phoned his girlfriend Bianca van der Westerhuizen. When the evidence was led in court by the prosecution regarding the murderous WhatsApp message by James John, the state did not ask James to read the message into evidence into court. She simply submitted it on a document into court. And shortly after, there was an adjournment where the media went over to the state and asked if they could see the message, and the state did not want to show them the message. However, the defense then, in cross-examination, asked James to read it out. My views on the reason why the state led evidence from James John this week in respect of the murderous WhatsApp message, obviously because people are saying why would they lead evidence, it doesn't seem to support their case. I think the reason why they've done so is because they want to show that in investigating this crime, they looked at all suspects and they investigated all options, because the defense seems to say in their plea explanation that they felt that perhaps the state had pinned the case on Henry as a suspect and not further investigated it. In comparison, the WhatsApp messages and missed phone calls between Henry and Bianca have not been brought into evidence, and we expect them to come in from the expert that extracted that information from their phones. Sasha the dog came up in court this week for the first time. Now, Henry didn't deal with a dog in his plea explanation, so we didn't know that there was even a family dog until the paramedics, Kuchlenberg, led evidence and said that Henry was sitting outside of the house petting a dog. Henry's counsel then asked in cross-examination where the dog had come from, and the paramedic wasn't sure. So we assumed that Henry didn't know where the dog came from. However, Precious, the domestic worker, then led evidence that there was a family dog. Her name was Sasha. She roamed freely around the house and she slept in Henry's bed. It was normal that when she arrived for work in the mornings that Sasha would bark. So it was an alert dog. And this is strange because we have heard evidence that there were no noise complaints from any neighbors that night, and one would assume that if there had been an intruder, that Sasha would have barked. We have no idea where Sasha is, and I'm very, very intrigued. I really want to know what happened to Sasha. I don't even know what kind of dog Sasha is, and that interests me too. Is she a little Maltese poodle or is she a Labrador? I think those are relevant points. Nobody's really discussed much detail on Sasha, so hopefully we hear more about her. So after this week, if we were to balance the scales, I would say that the scales are certainly weighing heavier on the state side. However, this can be expected when we are hearing evidence being led by the state. For live updates from court as this trial unfolds, follow me on Twitter. My handle is @TraceyAMS. Which they said had, we're not speculating at all here. We don't know if Sasha is a trained guard dog. Maybe she's an ex-police dog and an Alsatian, a Labradoodle.